G'day legends, I hope you're all fantastic. Welcome to another installment of Monday Q&A. I don't have to do the overdub this time. I remembered that today is actually a Monday. I hope you've all been fantastic. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend and made some awesome guitar noises. I'm going to get into this week's questions in just a second, but first I want to give my amazing patrons a shout out. Thank you to everybody who supports me over on Patreon. If you like what I do and you'd like to sign up to the Patreon, it is linked in the video description. There's a bunch of exclusive content on there, and there are multiple tiers that cater to just about any budget or any way you want to say, hey Leon, you're not the worst person on the internet. Although sometimes I do feel like the worst person on the internet. I'm sure we all do at some stage. Nevertheless, if you've got a question for next week's Q&A, pop it in the comment section below, and let's go. Do I name my guitars? Not really, but I have absolutely nothing against anybody who wants to give their guitars names. I normally just refer to my guitars by the model name or manufacturer. For example, my PRS DGT, I just call the DGT, or my Les Paul, I refer to it as a Les Paul. I do have friends who, put a lot of thought and time into naming their guitars and naming other things like their amplifiers or their speaker cabinets or the patch cables on their pedal board. Not really the patch cables on their pedal board, but you get the idea. I feel like guitar and music in general is such a personal thing that you want to personalize the things that you use to do the thing. So if you've got a guitar that you want to call Spider-Man because it reminds you of Spider-Man, I'm all for that. And that's part of the fun. Again, this doesn't have to be too serious. If you don't want to name your guitar, totally cool. If you want to name your guitar, totally cool. It's not some kind of moral exercise like anything else. It is all about having some fun and making some noise. Having said that, what do you all call your guitars? Regarding the fixed bridges on PRS guitars like the McCarty or my SC245, do I find that it tends to limit the string choices I can use? I will just say that for the string gauges I use, which are normally 10 to 52s, those bridges seem to work pretty well. The intonation isn't spot on perfect everywhere, but it is more than good enough to record with and to go and play live shows with. Having said that, I've been using the same gauge of strings on those guitars forever, so I haven't really changed the setup. While I appreciate that they're pretty much set and forget, having to change string gauges is not something I'd really want to look forward to on there. Let's say if I went down to 8s or I went up to 12s or something like that, I would want to go and get an adjustable bridge on there. So it's kind of one of those things where by design, it puts a set of limitations on there with the guitar. If it's designed around 9s or it's designed around 10s, and you realize that you can probably only use 9s or 10s with that setup, it's going to contribute to all of those guitars probably feeling consistent no matter which one you play or who's playing it, which I think is an interesting design choice. But if I was designing it, or let's say I had a signature model, I'd definitely ask for an adjustable bridge because it's going to be more flexible and it's going to let people do their thing on it a little more. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad design or a bad idea, but there's a reason lots of people have changed those bridges. There's also a reason why I haven't changed them. Speaking of which, what 6-string guitar would I recommend for some drop C playing? Again, this is all very contingent on budget. I think if you want to spend less than $1,000 US, it is pretty hard to go past the PRS SE DGT or any of the SE models, really. They are making some amazing stuff at the moment. You have all the other brands out there in a similar kind of fashion, whether it be brands like Schecter. They're doing some pretty cool super strat stuff at the moment as well. If you're more into the 80s thing, you've got LTD who are doing some really consistent stuff. Even some of the new Squiers and Epiphones coming out in that price range are really impressive these days. It's amazing how the overall quality of, well, if you want to call under $1,000 a budget guitar, I'm not sure everybody will agree with me there, but let's say the quality of guitars under $1,000 has really come up. If you've got a bit more to spend, then it really becomes a wide open question. You know that I love the PRS stuff, and they are more expensive than when I was getting into guitar. But again, they've got the SE range, the S2 range in there. I know some people have said they're sick of the PRS worship on YouTube, but I've been using PRS stuff since I was about 17 years old, and I absolutely love it. So I'm always going to recommend it first, but maybe I'll throw this one out to everybody in the comments section. Recommend a guitar that's going to be great for drop C, under $1,000, and over $1,000, kind of a budget option and a money's no issue option out there. I probably should have mentioned as well the Mark Holcomb SE as well, because that comes, well, there's a version of it that comes with an Evertune, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Before we move on to the Guitar of the Week segment, I want to read this comment out from last week because it really resonated with me and kind of made me think about a few things that I saw and heard during the week, just regarding guitar and guitar gear in general, and a really good reminder that while it's super fun to get into things like guitar gear and just music in general, that sometimes having an idea of like the bigger picture of what's happening in your life is a really important thing, and that it's not so much about the destination, it is about the steps you put in along the journey. And especially guitar and learning to play guitar and learning guitar gear is all about growth and having a growth mindset to it. So I'm going to read this comment out right here. This one is from Expat Z266. So last week we were talking about, words of encouragement for somebody who's had a big break from the guitar. And they said, definitely pick it back up if you've had to stop. I had a stroke 3 years ago, partial temporary paralysis on my left side that took out my ability to play for a while. I've been playing on and off for the last 50 years and just nailed, I'm going to say it the way we say it in Australia, YYZ, but I know it's YYZ, with leads literally hours before the stroke. The first leads I've ever really nailed. I'm a rhythm guitarist for the most part. I find that a break always helped. And this one, I had to focus hard on fingering and picking technique to even be able to play again. And as of today, it's done wonders for my playing. I'd always been pretty good at rhythm guitar and had been playing Satch, Nuno, and Vi's rhythms for decades, but the leads were beyond my bad habits. No more. Taught myself pornography front to back last month, and it was easy to deal with using good technique. Used the return from the break to focus on the fundamentals like hand position, finger and fretboard and picking. Economy picking was never really a thing for me this year, and you'll actually improve when you get it all back again. You'll probably be doing things that you couldn't even do before. Just do it. And that sums it all up for me. What do we want to focus on here? Do we want to focus on the minutia of whether a particular modeler sounds better than a real amp, or whether somebody's testing methodology is super flawed and it makes them a bad person? Or should we all just focus on trying to improve ourselves as players and people? That's a super inspiring story to me, because I feel like I've been super lucky in my life where I've never had any real challenges like that. But there are so many people out there dealing with these challenges and dealing with things far beyond that in their general life that, it's nice to have just a little bit of perspective and try to remember that this is all about having fun and not being afraid of putting in the hard work with our playing, and also enjoying things like gear and Guitar Gear YouTube. Speaking of which, I'm going to segue straight from that to a particular guitar I think you'll all like. This beast, this is a 1979 or 1980, I'm not 100% sure, Gibson ES335 or 335, whatever you want to say. It's pretty much all stock, including this coil tap on here, which is really, really interesting. Basically, it's a two-way selector that looks like a three-way selector on there, and yeah, it just splits the coils on the guitar. This guitar was my dad's guitar. He gigged this a whole lot. He was a massive, massive Alvin Lee fan, hence he was drawn to the 335 on there. I'm not sure what these pickups are. I feel like some people have told me they're probably T-tops, which I know are very, very desirable. Original frets, the original Imperial tuners on here, which is kind of crazy. I love the way this guitar sounds super clean and with loads of fuzz, and it is all over a bunch of different ragdoll recordings, but definitely the most special thing I've ever played on this is the guitar solo to a ragdoll song called Self-Censored. We were tracking it, and this guitar had the tone, and I had a bunch of goes at the solo. We were in this very spot right here. My good friend and Gear Podcast co-host, Mr. Troy Nababan, was basically saying, look, you're going to play the solo this take. What I want you to do is run around the block, and it had started to rain outside. I ran around the block as fast as I could. He tuned the guitar up. He had it set up and cued. I ran in, sat down, and then I played the solo on this guitar. So I'll always remember that. And then when I played the solo to my dad, he just kind of sat there taking it in. He was like, that's amazing. You need to have this guitar. It's yours now. So it's It's a very, very special instrument in that regard, and I'd love to get it refretted, but also at the same time, it's got its own thing going on because the frets are so low. It almost feels fretless, and it's got this beautiful clean sound. So I'll play you a little bit of 335 or 335 noodles to segue. A few questions regarding guitar sounds and tones going from the studio or the bedroom to the stage. What am I using for a solo boost live to make my guitar louder? If you've watched any of my FM3 live preset rundowns, there's a couple of things that I do. The first thing is I use the scene volume block to make everything louder, generally by about 3 dB. I do map that to the perform page, and this cricket is really getting excited as I'm talking about what I do for a solo boost, but I map that to the perform page. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. Basically everything a bit louder. I have a big greasy pitch detune if I'm playing in stereo, a big dual delay, and I also engage the fat switch and a boost in the amp block. So I get more gain, I get more mids up front, so everything's kind of smoother and just easier to play and everything gets louder. You could also do like, say, a 2 dB boost flat plus a parametric EQ or a filter block doing a 2 to 3 dB boost in, say, the 1 to 2K range to really help the guitar punch through on there. Alternatively, if like me, you use one of the Mark series amps, you could assign a modifier to the, what slider would it be? Is it the 800 slider on there? That is the middle one, the one that gives you the smile or the frown. So turn that up or down. That's another cool way to get a bit of a boost going on. And regarding big greasy leads, how do I approach the amount of grease? And when I say grease, I normally mean time-based effects. So delay, reverb, pitch detune, chorus, all that fun stuff that makes guitar swirl around and sound epic. Differences between live and in the studio. What I found is live, and I tell this story a lot, and I'll tell it in a second, but live I tend to err on the side of my time-based effects being a little more wet. I had a friend come down to a sound check a couple of years ago, and when I plugged my guitar in and started playing and just sound checked the guitar, they said, yeah, your delays and reverb on your solo sound were really wet. But then when the band started playing, it fit in really well. Keep in mind, you've got loud drums with sizzly cymbals on stage. For us in Ragdoll, Ryan's generally got a bit of grit on his bass guitar as well, so that's taking up even more space in there. So I want the time-based effects like the dual delays and the pitch detune to not just make the guitar sort of take up more space. I want the guitar to sit in a particular space, but I want it to be a bit wider, and sometimes I want it to be a little bit washier. Sometimes I want it more focused. Other times I want it to just sort of sound like it's filling up the entire stereo spectrum on there. So I tend to overemphasize it live. In the studio, it really depends. Sometimes if you've got a part where you really want the notes to do the talking, it can be nice to err on the side of everything being a little bit drier. Sometimes if you're doing an overdub or an underdub or something like that, it's nice to just go absolutely crazy and totally mutilate the guitar. Which leads into the next question, would I recommend active studio monitors if you're just playing in your bedroom at home? Absolutely. I think a great way to have a high quality guitar sound that is scalable and still really enjoyable, and with the upside of it being really nice to listen to music on, is a basic interface, a really nice guitar modeling plugin. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money on something like that. You know, under $100, there's loads and loads of great options with things that do great amp modeling and built-in effects, and then some active studio monitors, and you can have a great time. You can record yourself, you can practice along to your favorite music. It's not really that much setup compared to, say, running a solid state amp and a speaker. Having said that, something like the Positive Grid Spark or the Yamaha THR or a Boss Katana are also fantastic options where you don't have to be tied to a computer. And I know a lot of people love those options out there. Nuix make a few options out there. There's things like the recent Mua Prime that I did a demo video with. There's so many ways to get a guitar sound in your bedroom that's going to be absolutely amazing fun. And there's some of the most important guitar sounds out there. When I started playing, the very first thing I had was a Zoom 707. I used to play that with headphones on. I didn't know what I was doing, but I love the sound of the effects. I love the stepped phaser and flanger in there. I liked all the distortions and reverbs and delays. And they're the things that kept me hooked on actually practicing and playing. It also had a metronome in there. When I wanted to start to play like Paul Gilbert, that metronome showed me the way. And last one for this week, in-ear monitors for rehearsing and playing live, my thoughts and experiences with them. I absolutely love a good in-ears mix. My favorite thing about it is once it's dialed in live, you can walk around the stage and you've got the same sound everywhere you go. Furthermore, I found that since we moved to in-ears, specifically since our drummer moved to using in-ears, and Cam has a lovely set of Ultimate ears that are molded with loads of drivers, that we're a lot tighter as a band. When you can hear everything clearly, it is far easier to be accurate and on point live. There are drawbacks. It is not the same experience as having a 4x12 or multiple 4x12s absolutely raging behind you, moving a bunch of air. One compromise that we've found is that if you've got your in-ears absolutely purring, it's nice to have the monitors at the front of the stage and the side fill still on. For the people at the front of the stage, they're actually going to be able to hear something that way, and you can still feel air moving on stage, which is a big part of the experience for me. Furthermore, being able to rehearse on in-ears really has been a game changer for us. Like electric kit, Axe effects and SansAmp straight in. It sounds like you're in the studio with really, really expensive gear and a great mix, and all you've got to do is connect a few cables. And often we will go around to our drummer's house, Cam, and we'll go to his house and we'll do a rehearsal before the show. We'll just run the set. It's super easy to set up and get going, and it generally just gets you in a good mood to go and play a show. And again, you can hear everything clearly, which is really important. That's it for this week's Q&A. As always, if you've got a question you would like me to answer on next week's Q&A, simply put it in the comment section below. Have a great week. Stay safe. Be good to one another. Don't take anything too seriously and go and pursue some glorious, greasy guitar tones. I'll see you next time. Cheers.